Greetings, companions, and welcome to a new episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Depth. Before we get started, I wanted to point out a few things that might not be clear about the series. While parts of these episodes are objective, such as talking about the history and trends surrounding a deck, my review of how good or bad a card is will of course be subjective, like the mixed opinions around Pot of Desires, how good pendulum decks are, and whether or not Engage is Pot of Greed. I will try my best to remove my subjective viewpoints as much as possible when reviewing cards and strategies, but I am not perfect, and I will let one slip in here or there. Anyways, just keep that in mind and remember that I, like most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, am illiterate, bad at games, and bad at making lists. Now, let's talk about Crusadia. Crusadia is a newer deck, being released in Cybernetic Horizon in 2018, and has seen only a few pieces of support since then in Soul Fusion and Dark Neostorm, leaving the deck with only 15 or 16 cards. This deck's age also makes it hard to judge the popularity of the deck, but I haven't met anyone who hates Crusadia. I have, however, met a good number of people who are just as passionate about the deck as I am. Crusadia is also a major part of the World Legacy arc of the Duel Terminal story, being the last chapter of Ahrim's tale. This might also have an increase in the deck's popularity, as decks coming from the Duel Terminal arcs tend to be a little more popular ever since Duelist Alliance. The deck has seen several tops since release in several different incarnations that have risen and fallen with the different ban lists. Crusadia cards can be splashed into any deck that Link summons, which might also account for some of the representation in tournaments. The deck itself has never seen a card on the ban list, but the ban list has affected some of its builds, as it has with most decks. This deck has no continuous attribute or type, instead opting for representation of each attribute and some of the more popular types. The extra deck monsters, however, are all light attribute. The deck does lean heavily towards Link spam, specifically facilitating Link climbing, where the player Link summon continually higher Link-rated monsters. Being Link-focused does mean the deck gets no benefits from Master Rule 5, but the deck doesn't really need it to get the job done. Crusadia is also extremely aggressive, commonly OTKing the opponent on turn 2 or 3. Crusadia is extremely straightforward, allowing a new player to learn its combos and playstyle after only a few games. The deck does have a few drastically different options for builds that do get more complex as the decks become more powerful, while still maintaining its linearity. Crusadia is also splashable in any deck that can Link summon, so for all intents and purposes, it is splashable in all decks. If you need a tuner that can summon itself, just a few extra bodies for play extensions, or just a way to swing with a big number, Crusadia can do it. The linearity of Crusadia can also be its biggest downfall, as stopping your first Link summon or limiting the number of summons will shut the deck down. The deck wants to blind second, meaning established boards will stop Crusadia plays. Fortunately, the deck has a build that can be designed to combat these established boards, and is the deck you are seeing gameplay of over on the other side of the screen. Since the deck has so few cards, we will end up talking about all of them. Each main deck monster has the same primary effect where, once per turn, they can special summon themselves to your zones that a Link monster points to. Keep this in mind as we go forward with the other monsters. Your damage enablers are Maximus and Leonis. Maximus can enable a Link monster pointing at it to deal double battle damage, while Leonis enables said Link monster to deal piercing battle damage. Depending on the field and the other cards in your hand, these cards will let your boss monsters kill your opponent on that turn. The deck's protection cards are Crusadia Arborea and World Legacy World Crown. I know that World Crown isn't technically a Crusadia monster, but since it has the same special summon effect and is tightly tied to the deck in the lore, I figure it is the honorary 16th Crusadia monster. Arborea can banish itself from the grave to stop a Crusadia on the field from being destroyed, while World Crown contribute itself to negate the effect of a monster special summoned from the extra deck. It is a very niche effect, but still useful nonetheless. The next two monsters I can only refer to as chain blockers, as they usually help you activate the effects of your extra deck monsters. These are Crusadia Draco and Crusadia Reclusia. Draco, when special summoned, adds a Crusadia from your grave to your hand, while Reclusia, when special summoned, can destroy a Crusadia you control to pop another card on the field. Crusadia has one of the best back row lineups in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion. The field spell, Crusadia Revival, gives your Crusadia Link monsters 500 extra attack points, and once per turn, you can have one of your Crusadia Link monsters attack monsters your opponent controls once each. None of your other monsters can attack this turn, however. If you're having trouble getting 8k damage in one one string or your opponent is turtling up, Revival will get you covered. Crusadia Power is a quick play spell that can, once per turn, give one of your Crusadia monsters immunity to all other effects besides its own. This will give your monster protection from everything besides beaters and Kaiju, letting you continue to combo or protect your boss monster on the opponent's turn. Crusadia Testament serves a similar purpose, being another quick play spell that can, once per turn, either stop your opponent from responding to your Crusadia monster's effects, or draw cards equal to the link rating of the monster your link monster destroys. Since you don't get to search your back row until later in the combo, and by the time you get there you won't need to draw cards, Power takes the cake over Testament every time. Crusadia Crawler is a trap monster that, if special summoned to a zone your link monster points to, can search for a World Legacy card, which for Crusadia decks that run this card will almost always be World Legacy Succession. Crusadia Vanguard forces your opponent to only attack your link monsters, and you contribute a Crusadia or World Legacy to replace it with a different one. Since Crusadia is a combo deck, these don't see much play anymore because trap cards are unfortunately too slow. The extra deck monsters are just as integral to the Crusadia strategy as the main deck monster. They all, given one exception, have the effect to gain the attack of monsters that they appoint to in exchange for those monsters being unable to attack. This lets your monsters get to ridiculous levels of power quickly. The first of these are Crusadia Magius and Crusadia Regulex. Magius is a Link 1, requiring one non-link Crusadia monster that searches for a Crusadia monster when a monster is special summoned to its link zone. Regulex is a Link 2, requiring two effect monsters, one of which being a Crusadia monster that searches for a Crusadia spell or trap when a monster is summoned to its link zone. These two make the bread and butter of your combo, allowing you to get the extra bodies and protection you need to push for game. Crusadia Spatha is a bit more niche. She has the same requirements as Regulex, but when a monster is summoned to her link zone, you can move any monster on the field to another monster zone. This can help you set up for one of your links that points to your opponent's field, or move your monster so you can summon another Crusadia. This card was best known for the Crusadia guardragon deck, as Spatha could move your LP without searching World Legacy guardragon. She is still run at 1 in most traditional Crusadia decks. The main star and OTK enabler of the deck is Crusadia Avramax. He is a Link 3 that needs 2 different effect monsters, with at least one being a Link monster. Avramax can also tribute a World Legacy or Crusadia monster to negate a face-up card's effects as a quick effect. Since he has the highest attack potential among your extra deck monsters and a semi-universal negate, Avramax is the monster you usually end your combo on. Mekk-knight Crusadia Avramax serves as the final incarnation of Aram, and the final card in the Crusadia lineup. Avramax is a Link 4, needing 2 or more monsters summoned from the extra deck, and does not share the effect to gain attack points with the rest of the extra deck lineup. Instead, Avramax gains the attack of special summoned monsters it battles. If Avramax was link summoned onto your field, he cannot be targeted by card effects, and your opponent can only attack it. Then, if Avramax is sent to the graveyard after being link summoned, you can shuffle 1 card into the deck. Avramax is a great card. He is hard to remove, especially if you use IP Masquerena as material, or if you use Crusadia Power on it, and the floating effect makes your opponent think twice about removing it willy-nilly. However, I always seem to make it when my opponent has just the perfect out to it, be it a Solemn, a bounce effect, or just a Kaiju. My experiences tell me to cut it, but I know that would be a mistake. There are 3 main builds for Crusadia decks. The gameplay you are seeing is the Crusadia Kaiju build of the deck. This version of the build leans hard into the going second and hitting hard play style of the deck, using Kaiju to remove problematic cards and positioning them so Avramax can point at them for the OTK swing. This might be the best performing deck on the market that is dedicated to going second. Mekk-knight Crusadia seems to be a pair made in our dreams, as both archetypes are all about summoning themselves in specific zones and even have reason to work together in the lore. However, I find this deck to be too much of a good thing. While Mekk-knights allow this deck to play a more varied extra deck, it comes at the cost of the removal that comes with the Kaiju package. On the upside, it does mean that you are more likely to play through your opponent's board, or have plays to make if your opponent doesn't have anything you can work with. I do not like the feel of this deck, but I understand its merits and appeal. The third option is the Crusadia guardragon deck that gained popularity when the deck topped a few events after the release of the guardragon package. If I remember correctly, it was one of the first decks to make use of guardragons. Unfortunately, the deck had too many steps to set up said dragon plays, and the decks that could do it faster ended up taking the meta slots. This version of the deck has the best turn 1 plays, ending with Appaloosa, Naturia Beast, Gamma Seal, and other great negation cards, but only if you you can get there. All in all, Crusadia is surprisingly modular and varied for a deck originally designed to do one thing and one thing only. Sadly, the deck is either too slow, too inconsistent, or just too easily disrupted to have done enough to break through the meta. Despite this, I still love the deck. They may not look anything like the Templars, but crusading with Crusadia is still some of the most fun I've had while playing this card game. I just want to say hello, and thank you to all the new followers on the channel. We've had a relatively fair bit of growth on the channel since Yu-Gi-Oh! In Depth has started. I know most of you are here because of my deck lists, or you've caught me on Twitch streaming Yu-Gi-Oh! Regardless of why you're here, I am extremely glad that you are. That's it for this video. I hope I can get these out faster in the future once things in life start to calm down. Until then, I will catch you all in the next video. Adios.